And welcome to Wrestling and Everything Coast to Coast with Buddy Sotello Esquire and our very, very special guest tonight, author Kenny Casanova.
Yes.
Kenny, on the last second, we're missing Evan. He's recovering from writing his book, and Mike Lano wasn't able to make it last night. We had a power outage. Everything's crazy around here in California, but it is great to have one of my favorite personalities on our show, a previous guest of ours, wide-eyed and pen happy, Casanova. So welcome tonight, and thanks again for being our guest.
No problem. You're breaking up a little video-wise on my end, but if it's not breaking up on yours, I don't think people.
Yeah, as long as it records over here, okay, we're fine. And
am I like Mr. Roboto, or am I all smooth?
No, it got a little grainy once I hit record, but the fans will still get your dulcet tones coming through well. So I wanted to say, first of all, I had a chance to read your book Vader Time, and I found it to be very, very entertaining. And you've written so many books, but you were telling me a little bit before we started about how Vader Time was a particular effort of love for you in a lot of ways to get it done. Can you tell the viewers a little bit more about it?
Yeah, I mean, it was tough for a number of reasons. One, first off, he's very particular. Some people might use the word stubborn if he doesn't get his way, and it's his book, so he has to, we should get his way. There's no, ifs, ands, or about that. But I would say for this, definitely more particular. And that took about 2 years to get right, what usually takes me about a year. But then at that 2-year mark, he got the diagnosis that he only had 2 years to live. So then we kind of had to go back and rework stuff because he didn't want it on his conscience, slamming somebody or, saying something he didn't want, in the event of his passing where he couldn't fix something. So we went back and cleaned up a few things. And I think he made peace with himself mentally and used it as, a cathartic outlet, the book itself. And by the time the book was ready to come out, he passed just before it came out. So he didn't even get to see it, unfortunately. His son did, and his son helped me polish it up and get some things squared away, like an epilogue type of thing at the end and all. He did. He also, but he's a businessman. He went through and signed all these like little decals. Actually, Bill Apter gave us this idea. Bill Apter said, "Why don't you have him sign a bunch of decals so you can sell autographed books in the event of his passing if he's no longer with us?" Because that 2-year mark was right around when the book was supposed to come out. So we had him do it, and it did work out. So you can get an autographed book, but very weird. Almost morbid way to make it happen, was the plan for that. So, when I got the call, from Jesse and all, his son, is super sad, of course. And we kept it going, for him though. So that was kind of his legacy. We got it out. He really wanted to get into the Hall of Fame, and that hasn't been in the cards. And especially it's the kind of thing when you ask, that's when you're not going to get in. So he had been kind of saying, "Come on, find a spot for me there," and it didn't happen. But I kept telling him in the end, you know what, the book's your Hall of Fame. This will be around long after, and I think the fans will dig it. And you said you liked it, so I'm happy to hear that.
Yeah. Now, Evan and I have gone around on the Hall of Fame, and it's there's. It's more a popularity contest with Vince McMahon and the McMahon family than it is, what were your contributions? Because Ivan Koloff still isn't in the Hall of Fame, and I don't believe Bret Hart is yet. You obviously a guy like Vader isn't in there, and yet you have guys like Rikishi, and not to say that Beth Phoenix and not to say that Kid Rock. Okay, I will say Kid Rock does not deserve to be in the WWE Hall of Fame. And Drew Carey doesn't deserve to be.
I mean, I guess they deserve where they are in there. Is like just what do they call it? Like the celebrity wing. I mean, I don't know what you can. I mean, is William Shatner in there? I remember he did some stuff with Raw. I'd like to see William Shatner get in there if he has it because I'm a bit of a Trekkie.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know. Do you even consider that wrestling? That's the entertainment side of things, I suppose, right?
Yeah. Well, it certainly, is unfortunate that the Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame that's where now it's in Texas, I think. Was in New York, and they moved it to Texas.
Yeah. It was right up my neck of the woods up here when it was here originally.
Right. Nobody knows anything about it. It's got so little, none of the other feds do much to prop it up. So it's kind of invisible, even though
it had a big following up here. I don't know what happened in Texas per se, but the commissioner or the president of the Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame, PWHF, his name was Tony Villano, and Tony Villano was a New York State athletic commissioner for years and years and years up here in New York. So whenever you would go to do a wrestling show, and for those of you that don't know, I was also in the industry for a long time. Kenny Casanova was my pro wrestling manager name. I would see him backstage, Tony Villano, and he would do boxing. He later would do MMA, and he did tons of pro wrestling. So he would be backstage for WWE events as well as independent shows. And I saw him at both at different times. So Tony Villano was a great person to get in there for that. And he did a super job promoting. He kind of took the reins and ran with the Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame. And they even had a location up here in Amsterdam, New York, which is about 45 minutes from Albany, New York, where I am. And they had all kinds of cool stuff there, and they still do. And we were able to donate one of Kamala's, ring skirts that he would wear to the ring. And we put together this little display and stuff with the book, and signed action figures, and just some memorabilia type stuff, along with all kinds of neat stuff that was in there. So if people are able to see that still in some capacity in Texas, which I believe they are on some campus somewhere, like a college campus.
Yeah, I forgot where it was too.
Yeah,
Wichita. I'm not going to Texas anytime.
But yeah, I hear you.
No offense to any of our Texas listeners out there.
Yeah.
I'm not going to Texas. Sorry, guys. I've been to El Paso, and that was enough for me.
Yeah, and Mick Foley's got a little display there with an original Mankind outfit, and then there's just tons of posters and signed 8x10s and gear and just tons of neat stuff there. I mean, if it were a collector's collection, it would be the biggest collection I've ever seen. It's a pretty good collection. So I hope they keep going with that. I heard for a time there was an issue with it in Texas where some kind of misappropriation of fund accusation, but I don't know if that ever panned out or if everything was fine afterwards. It could have been sour grapes of it moving from New York to Texas. I know there was some issue with that at one point, but
yeah, it's unfortunate it doesn't have a greater appeal, because the kind of thing that I think if it were done the right way, I think it could be a real attraction, for people to go to. Kind of for jealous reasons, I wish it were somewhere in California so I could go see it more often, because I definitely would visit it. And us Californians also would like to lay claim for having some pretty important wrestlers coming through here, but New York also, if it were near Madison Square Garden, that would make sense also. All things.
Where are you in California?
I'm just out north of San Francisco.
Oh, okay, cool.
I'm in Marin County, and the one thing I can say about Marin County is we actually do own the other half of the Golden Gate Bridge. People assume the Golden Gate Bridge just sort of goes into like nothing after it. It's in San Francisco. Yeah, it goes into San Francisco. Where's the other half go? Nobody ever asks. That's Marin County. Believe it or not, we actually have a reason for existing. We don't exist. The Golden Gate Bridge just drives off into nowhere. You just drive into the nethersphere. But we really do exist out there. And we're the home of George Lucas and Lucas.
Oh yeah,
and all that stuff.
Are the redwoods above you?
Yes. In fact, well, they're south of me. But redwoods are all over the place. There's one down my block if I feel like I need to hug one.
Cool. I've only been to San Francisco once, and we went to see the Redwood Forest, and that was pretty cool. And I kept looking for Ewoks, but I just
that's the River Forest area is where they shot the indoor scene.
Nice. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. So that's very south cool. of me. That's in like the Mill Valley area, and then I'm up north in a place called Novato, which is not nearly as exciting, and that's why I don't have to pay the kind of rent that I would pay if I were down in Bryn, which is Manhattan-like, if you wanted to really sum that up. But and that's why we call it wrestling and everything coast to coast. I represent the West Coast, and Evan brings forth the East Coast, and we sort of talk everywhere in between.
There you go.
But last time we had you on the show, focused so much on your authordom, we didn't really talk much about your pro wrestling background and how you got started as a manager. Why don't we take a minute out and talk about your history as a manager and what you did as a manager?
All right, so I guess it starts way back 88, 89. I helped promote just selling tickets and helping backstage a little bit for a Captain Lou Albano independent that was running as an MS a fundraiser. And it was in Binghamton, New York area, so Vestal is what it was called. And I got to sell tickets. I brought some of the guys' coats back to the ring. I was probably 17. I don't know.
How'd you hear about that event?
A kid in my homeroom said that his mom worked for them as, multiple sclerosis foundation, and had all these tickets. And if I wanted to sell them, then they'd let me meet and have a dinner with the wrestlers after the show and this and that. So I went out like crazy, door to door, knocking on, seeing if people, and this was when it was okay to knock on a door back in the day. You do that today, when people hide if someone rings your doorbell.
But, were you a fan of wrestling before that?
Yeah. That's why I think they approached me. There weren't a lot in there, but I was a big fan.
What was where did your love of wrestling first start from?
I would say the Hulkamania, but it was a little before that. My mom used to watch it, and I remember her and also my grandma yelling at the screen. Some of the earliest probably moments I remember that Larry Zbyszko, Captain Lou with the Samoans are probably some of the first few things that I remember seeing as a kid. So that predates Hulkamania. I also I lived in Boston, Massachusetts at around this time, and I also was able to I got WWF, but I also could see World Class on some kind of syndication. So I was watching the Von Erichs as well on Saturday mornings. So little Texas, little Dallas. But then to fast forward to high school, and I watched it a lot as a kid with my parents and thereafter. And I remember them bringing me to Boston Gardens, and my sister was probably like 4, and she could sleep through anything and fell asleep during a wrestling match, with people screaming and everything. So we always teased her with that. How could you sleep during wrestling, whole thing. I remember that main event for anybody that was taking track. Probably the first show I went to had Chief Jay Strongbow versus Greg the Hammer Valentine. And the finish had Chief Jay Strongbow get a ring of keys from the audience and just bust open Greg the Hammer. And I've seen this as a kid, and there's blood and all this. Wow. And I remember saying to my dad, he's the good guy. Why is he beating up Greg the Hammer Valentine with and he got disqualified was the finish for that. And my dad explained to me that it was finally vengeance. It was finally the big, the payoff. And it was okay for him to do it because all the bad stuff that had happened to him before that I hadn't seen, So, and then I started to get some of the storyline idea in my head, like how it worked. Oh, there's stories behind this and stuff, So, and then we fast forward probably, maybe 10 years, and I'm selling tickets. And the people on that show had like the Samoan SWAT team was on it. I think Colonel De Beers was there. There was some local indie talent. A guy named Matt Masters was there. Misty Blue, Debbie Combs, guys like that. Tony Atlas, Superfly was there. Basically, Superfly was on any show though in the Northeast around at that time. Wow. He was a big headliner at that time. So after the show, I'm sitting eating buffalo chicken wings with Captain Lou Albano, and I'm watching. He's eating the cartilage off the end of it. Like he would strip those bones down to nothing, And I say to him, I went over to him, I notice you eat the whole thing. And he's like, the cartilage, that's the best part. And we get to talking, and he's acting kind of gross and silly. And he signs me all these autographs. I still have them. Like there was kind of like a picture of him, a little bit like the T-shirt he used to wear with the art.
Where he's wearing the tuxedo.
Yeah, a little bit like that. Yeah, and he wrote on the top of it something like call. He's always like, working, call 1-900-4-LOU. It was like a 900 number for a period of time. Remember, the wrestlers could make extra money if they had their own 900 numbers, and he had one.
$1.99 a minute.
So and he signed that. And then he gave me another picture. The other picture was a picture of him, I believe Afa, and then the Samoan SWAT team, I think. Or it could have been the Headbangers, or the Head Shrinkers. It was the Head Shrinkers. That's right. So I actually have like an 8x10 too that he signed, and I'm just about to get Afa to sign it. And I've got the other two signed too, so I'll have that complete probably the end of this weekend, actually, which is taking years to make that happen. Wow. So I mean, he talked to me a little bit about the business. I said I always liked the idea of managing, and he said, he's like, how old are you? I said 17. He's like, you got to wait a couple years. And he's like, but if you look us up, we'll try to hook you up. And we've got, I think he was plugging at that time, probably a wrestling school in the Pennsylvania area with maybe the Wild Samoans running it. And I was too young still. I was 16, 17. What happened was, fast forward 3 or 4 more years, I'm running a comic book store. And then a guy comes in, says he's going to go off and find a wrestling school. And we go to one in Elmira it was called Bone Crusher's Gym. And the promotion was called USWF. And it had different various guys that kind of ran it, the school. The main guy's name was T.C. Reynolds, and a guy named Preston Steele. Some people might recognize his name. But time to time, other people would jump in, and those were guys that were on the promotion. So there were a lot of early day type seminars. You know how these days, someone will show up and Shane Douglas will show up to some promotion and teach a seminar and then leave, and then Al Snow will do one and stuff like that. Well, back then they just made it as part of the deal, come train the guys a little bit and then we'll throw you in the show. And so I had all these different people come in, I remember Bam Bam Bigelow. I remember, Virgil was around, Superfly Snuka. Tom Brandy was there a lot too. Tom Brandy gave me all kinds of neat Memphis spots. I was training to be a manager. He spent a lot of time with me. He was cool. Steve Carino was there. He was really new. There were all kinds of people going through there. Those are just a few to name.
Who are the big names that you were able to manage?
So right off the bat, Bundy a lot. I managed Bundy quite a bit. I managed opposite Superfly a lot, which was weird. So it didn't matter who it was, but I was opposite, and I did a lot of different spots with Superfly Snuka.
You did a giant headbutt on you.
Yep.
Nice, so, nice. The big shop.
Yep.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So other guys that were around at that time, and they put me on quite often. I would do shows that I would have 3 or 4 appearances. So I started buying many different costumes, not just one. I would want to change it up so I didn't look just the same each time. A lot of names I worked with, and that's quite how it would happen a lot in these kind of shoestring budgets. I didn't always manage the name, but I managed a local talent versus the name. So the headline was one guy, and they would bank all on bringing that one guy in, but then he'd be wrestling, a heel of a local indie talent name. So I manage all these different people, but basically guys on the top were, again, Bundy, Beefcake was there a lot, Greg the Hammer Valentine, Superfly Snuka. Tom Brandy would do a couple different gimmicks on a show.
Tell me what working with King Kong Bundy was like.
He was awesome. He had a very sarcastic, wry sense of humor, and a lot of times I couldn't tell he was joking, and he was a little intimidating because he's so big. But really, when it came down to it, he was a nice guy. But he wanted things his way too. We had to make sure he was happy, or you would hear it. So,
did he have hair back then?
No, not quite.
Okay, because I remember there's a really long time ago.
Yeah, it wasn't quite that long ago. So this was in 94, 95, 96, in that area. He had hair probably, I would guess, and that was more world class. You're talking probably, I don't know, 84, 85, somewhere in there.
This was kind of after his WWE.
Yeah, it was after WWE. Yep.
Okay. Yeah. So
I worked with guys like.
I was actually at WrestleMania 2.
Okay.
Live,
nice.
And I saw the Hogan Bundy.
Yeah.
Match.
Oh, cool. Yeah. In the big blue steel cage, right?
Big blue steel cage. Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah. Over at LA Sports Arena. My brother and I paid. I think my brother paid $15.
Nice. All right.
I know, but we were in the way top part of the LA
Bob
Sports.
Huker seats.
Yeah, and there was so much weed smoke there that it was pretty much like a solid cloud. Like you had to push the smoke aside so that you could see what was going on.
Nice.
Back when you could smoke inside an arena, that dates it right there. They actually had smoking sections in arenas back then. But
that's why yours was $15.
Yeah, exactly. So so from managing, how did that then lead to you becoming an author?
So many years later after that, and I mean other names, I started managing like Nikolai Volkov, Iron Sheik, Iron Mike Sharp. Then some newer guys came through me, Brody Lee. You mentioned before we started talking the death of the question mark. I managed Aaron Stevens for a while.
Wow.
Yeah,
that's great.
Yeah, I managed Aaron Stevens. He was awesome. And I'll tell you with that guy,
fact,
early on.
Something that you'll be impressed with.
Okay. I was just going to say early on, he was a super baby face look. Like he didn't do any heel stuff. There you go. Nice.
My friend and I are huge fans of Aaron Stevens. So we've been fans of his since the early days of when he was first Damien Sandow.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I managed him in a promotion in Massachusetts called WWA for a guy named Mike Spada. He used to talk with that Boston accent and cursed all the time, F this and F this, so I'll keep it clean. But Aaron Stevens was brand spanking new there. And we had Bruce Pritchard would come to WWA, and it was a bit of an agent situation, talent scout kind of thing. And he would watch some of the matches, and this predates Florida, Ohio Valley. This predates NXT, of course. And Aaron Stevens was just a super clean baby face, long hair, no facial hair, really young. And he was nervous when he first started in his first days. And I remember first match, I was managed a guy named Jeff Starr, and Aaron Stevens was opposite. We're waiting behind the gorilla, waiting for the music and this and that. And they used to do the national anthem, and they're playing the national anthem, and I'm singing like my best opera version of it back in the gorilla and cracking up Aaron Stevens because I was like over the top, like and Aaron Stevens loosened it up a little bit, and then come the second, third show I think I worked with him, he's singing right along with me, right? So and he had like all of the technical skills. He was great and stuff like that. And I remember actually Bruce Pritchard. Tom Pritchard. I was saying Bruce before, wasn't I? Tom Pritchard.
I think so.
Yeah, my mistake. I'm actually working on Bruce Pritchard's book along with him. It's on hold right now, so I have Bruce in my brain.
Yes.
But I remember Tom saying, get him doing comedy stuff. I want to see him do funny stuff, So I try to loosen him up a little bit. This is basically, these are probably some of his first early matches. And once I saw him loosening up and goofing around backstage and laughing with the, singing with me opera style and all, it didn't shock me when he eventually surfaced as Damon Sandow, and he was, working on more comedy chops and stuff like that. Because in between that, he wasn't as much, but
but he is really great. I mean, I was watching an interview about a year ago with him and the question mark together doing their shtick. As the third degree black belt, third degree North American champion, and the question mark was doing his karate thing, and it was really great. And I'm really so sad to see a character like the question mark gone. It really does suck. There's a little video that's on the net on YouTube called Also Known As. Have you seen that?
No.
It's sort of just, it was a video that he made of himself while he was still it's like about a 5-10 minute video that was done about the guy who was the question mark, while he was still working in the Indies and before he got into the NWA. And it just it's one of those things when you watch it, you're like, oh yeah, I've been there. I've been there, and it's just a sad tribute to a guy who was a real kind of quiet guy. He was a librarian. He was actually
I didn't know that. Huh.
I know, and he has all the book collection and all this stuff. He's like, normally I'm a pretty quiet guy, and now look, I'm in the middle of all this shouting, and he was hoping for a big break, and he got it. I think he was really on his way to becoming a fun throwback. Everyone wants to recapture some of the magic from the 80s, some of the magic from the late 70s, and a lot of times they try so hard and they miss. But I felt like the question mark really hit that the way that I remember things, and that I felt there was kind of a joy in it because it was so basic, and it was something that was that it seemed to fit him, Josephus, so perfectly that it was wonderful. And Aaron really ran with it, when he was given to work with him. And he was so over from the very first time he was out there. It's really tough to see him gone.
Yeah, that stinks.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit more about some of the people that you've had the opportunity to interview. I mean, the list, I could just going through the list of all the people that you've done would take up the rest of the hour. So, I want to, your Kamala book, I know I helped make a little bit. I don't know if you ever took any of the pictures that I gave you and used them in the book, because I haven't read your Kamala book yet, but
maybe we did. It'd be tough to tell. I know. I feel like your name's somewhere written. So I know one of the books.
I gave you something from Wrestle Fan Fest, which was one of his last in 2007.
Yeah, so I think that's in there, and if it's not in the print version, it might have worked its way into the ebook. But it may be in the print version too. I can't really remember. But the ebook, which will become the second print eventually, has like bonus material, and we were still kind of putting it together because basically the Kamala book was a reward, like for Kickstarter. So that's how I got into the writing and this and that. So I was still kind of doing a lot of managing stuff. And what happened was I had kind of like a karaoke type gimmick. I would come to the ring and sing and act goofy, and that kind of transformed into, hey, can you do karaoke at an independent at like a little party for me, like just a civilian party? Sure. And then I'd bring the sound guy with me, and we'd try to figure out how to do karaoke, and then that turned into, can you DJ? So I kind of learned that. And can you wedding DJ? So what happened was it just kind of like organically turned me into a wedding DJ. My gimmick, my managing gimmick. I kind of going from like a Tom Jones lounge singer, karaoke, lizard.
See, I'm jealous. That's the kind of character I would have loved to have had.
Yeah.
But nobody wants to let me sing.
So I would sing my guy to the ring, you know what I mean? And like I would pick horrible songs like a Britney Spears song or, just the worst stuff, Madonna, whatever I could find, right, that would make people boo instead. Anyhow, and as I said, I became a wedding DJ, and man, that paid so much more. It kind of started pulling me out of the independent wrestling scene because all the shows were on Saturdays and so were the weddings. And man, I could make 10 times the amount as a wedding DJ that I could managing, and I didn't have to drive around as much. So I started doing that a little bit more. And I also did some kimchi for Kamala, and then maybe 5-10 years, or so after that, he lost both legs to diabetes, and I was about to put a sci-fi book out, and I wrote him and said, hey man, what do you think about, no, I didn't write him. I actually called him. What do you think about doing a book? We'll do like a Kickstarter and we'll put a book together. And he said, Kenny, this sounds like a good idea, but I might want you to run it by my financial advisor first and see what he thinks. And I said, okay. So he gives me the number and I call up, and It's Coco Beware.
Really?
And Coco Beware said, "I just want you to do the best you can, Kenny. You gotta remember not to, to picture that he's been ripped off so many times over the years, and I want you to take care of him like he's somebody's grandfather, because he is." And I was like, I'm gonna do my best, man, for him, and we did. We worked really hard on the book. I didn't know a lot about publishing and this and that. But we got it together for the Kickstarter best we could. And then I started to learn, if we publish it on our own, instead of like hand it off to ECW Press or Crowbar or one of the other more established places, he'll make more money. So I really dug my feet in. I talked to Jeff Archer, who's a friend of Evan's. And I talked to some other people and figured out like all the contacts to make it happen, got it up on Amazon. So the reward got out there. He made something like 30 grand. Steve Austin and Roddy Piper put him on their podcast, pushed the book. Tons of pre-orders, did fine getting it out, put it up on Amazon, and still sells today. So it did really well. There are a couple little errors in there because Jeff Archer missed a few, but we were rushing to get it out, and he was the editor. No big deal because it still served its purpose. And then when we put the ebook together out of that, we cleaned some of that stuff up, and that's where we might have added that bonus material. I think I might have talked to you in between there and got the information about he went and did that show, as I recall, that no one got paid for. Is that you?
Yeah,
not you that did that,
yeah,
but I mean, you took the pictures,
was the
right?
One that was
right?
the
it was
the
a huge show.
The last big all-star, Wrestle Fan Fest, and that was in 2007. That ought to tell you how many bridges were burned that no one has wanted to do anything like that before or since. And
a few people made money on that. It was the couple of people who left the arena before the promoter. So that's all I heard, is like one or two of them grabbed their pay before he was able to get away, whoever the promoter Shark was.
Scott Norton. I know Scott Norton did. I think Piper did.
Yep.
And I think Diamond Dallas Page did.
Okay.
I think the rest of them all got ripped off.
And there were tons of them.
And the story, one of the stories is that Jimmy Superfly Snuka was in tears because they had promised him to pay his flight on the way back, and they didn't have any money for him, and he didn't have enough money in his account, which is heartbreaking in itself.
I don't know what happened.
Fly himself back out to from SFO, because a lot of people don't understand, if you're not in the Bay Area, that the people who put the event together flew him into San Jose, and to fly out from SFO to Hawaii is astronomically, especially if you're trying to get a ticket at the last second. Fly yourself overnight to Hawaii, it's like $1,500.
Wow, I wonder what he did then, man. Do you know? Did you ever hear?
Yeah, people had to come up with money. People basically, he had to basically hand his hat around, and people like gave him money so that he could fly back to get a El Cheapo flight from San Jose. And I think he had to sleep on the floor of the airport.
Was Sabu in that one? Do you know?
No, Sabu was not in that particular match. No,
I remember Sabu, though, telling me a story where he...
Sandman was.
Maybe it was him. Yeah. I remember one of the ECW guys, and I thought it was Sabu because I did his book, but somebody telling me that they did that show, and they handed somebody money, like pretty much their whole check, just so they could get home, or almost the whole deal.
People had to do that, and they did step up and help, but it was such a disaster that no one has touched anything like that ever since. I was lucky to go because Lano had a press pass, and he brought me in as his assistant, so I was his photographic assistant. So I had a press pass, and I went all over the place, got to meet all sorts of great wrestlers. It was fun, but it was sad. The time itself was fun, but I was like watching, and I was like, they maybe had 500 people in the Cow Palace, which holds about 10,000 people. And I was like saying, there's no way that they're paying for this entire place with a crowd of 500 people.
That sucks.
And so, it's hard to draw. I mean, even in the heyday, when wrestling was at its highest, we never got shows bigger than 500 people for the most part in any venue. And for the most part, we were in the if you get 300, for a house crowd, for a show, no matter who you had on the card, that was a pretty good show. And a lot of times it was 100, and under 100 was obviously bomb scare territory. And, people were pretty pissed off about it. But I got to tell you, I was always fortunate enough to work shows with guys like Christopher Daniels and Ballard Brothers that put on a good show if there were a million people watching them or there were just 10 people watching them.
Right. And the audience makes the show. I mean, if you got a hot audience and it feels good,
And it is tough when you're expecting the big crowd and it doesn't happen, and when you go, God, we had so many, ticket inquiries, and so everyone said they're going to bring 20 people and all their friends and all that stuff. And then you still drawing the curtain back and you're going, is that it? Is that everybody? It's just, I know that. It brings me up to the Young Rock, which I was telling you about before.
Yeah, I have to check that out. I didn't see it.
You will enjoy it. You will enjoy. I saw it last night. There's only 2 episodes, but I watched it last night, and it was really actually a lot of fun to watch. Yeah. All right. So. It kind of follows The Rock as he runs for president, so to speak, and he's they've got like 4 segments of his life: the young Rock, the kind of high school Rock, then the college Rock, and then Rock, as he is today. And it sort of goes around those little time frames, but it's really it doesn't take itself too seriously, but there's parts in there that are absolutely true the way it happened. Cool. And it's, I mean, because Rocky now, the Dwayne Johnson, he's got nothing to lose. If he tells the truth, like he was a shoplifter when he was younger, what are people going to do? It's like suddenly say, you're a bad guy and I won't follow you because you said you used to shoplift as a high schooler. He's like letting it all hang out because, like, as you pointed out, and I think it sort of ties back into what you do as an author. Don't you find there's sort of this catharsis, as you said, like with Vader, where people, when they're writing a book, especially about their lives, that they can finally say the things that they wanted to say. They've been on the back of their minds. They can finally just get it out of there. And then once they've done that, they feel like there's a huge just purging of their minds.
That's one of the selling points I do in the books. Like sometimes what I'll do is when a guy skirts around the issue, I mean, for instance, at first Leon Vader didn't want to talk about the flip-flop incident with Paul Orndorff that everybody was seen or heard, right? He's like, I'm just going to not talk. I don't want it in the book, and I'm like, if you don't put it in, here are the things. You're going to have fans like bitch and say that you're a coward for not putting it in. You might sell less because you get bad reviews. If you do put it in, you'll be able to tell your side of the story. You may even be able to, somewhat, I won't say apologize, but the kind of, make peace with however you want to do, certain things in stories, and this is talking about anybody's book, really. That's the way I plug it, same with Brutus and a number of different things, when he had his divorce and then he had that incident with drugs and Subway and different things. So like when I have a reluctant guy, that's the means I go, and usually it seems to work. I don't know if I'm just a little charismatic or whatever, and they eventually give me the story and we get it. So I haven't had anybody block anything yet. So
good. Well, but I think you've gotten to the truth on a number of interesting areas, especially in the Vader book. I think you really do hit some things that people have always wondered about, but didn't know what the truth is. And that kind of leads me to my next question, which is, why is it important that we understand wrestling history like this and understand the lives of these wrestlers outside of this? Because a lot of people would say, well, it's all make-believe, it's all fake, it's all just guys, that couldn't be professional actors and they couldn't be professional athletes, so they do wrestling. Why is that important for us to know the stories behind these people?
Probably more so than even like rock fans, right? I mean, that's what it seems like. Like, I'm a big music fan, but I don't feel that I want to go and learn, what, say, Louis Prima did in the 40s or what Bret Michaels did in the 90s. I don't, I understand that they're maybe, they're the equivalent of a ring rat, a roadie for, or whatever we would call them, groupie, for metal bands, hair bands, or something like that. But maybe because of wrestling, having that element of fake and people want to be in on the real side of it, and they want to be part of. I'm guessing here, but I'd find it more like trying to answer the big questions that it's not real, but how is it not real? Like when I was a kid, I knew that there was some element of fake stuff going on. So what is that? And then even further, what are these people really like behind the scenes? Because the wool is being pulled over your eyes, and you kind of want to like pull the curtain back and see the wizard, and see and learn the magic trick behind the magic, So it's probably something like that, I would guess. And I like the analogy that we just used with, why don't I choose to pick up a rock biography more so than wrestling if I like both? And maybe it goes to that, solving that mystery of what we believe to be untrue and trying to find out the truth behind it. You think? I don't know.
No, this is why I love to delve deeper into the creative process and try to find out why you're doing what you're doing. I also wanted to know if someone to write, when you eventually have a book written about you, what do you want that title to be?
Jeez, I don't know if anyone would buy it, but maybe please buy this book.
Yeah, no, that's been done. That's been done. And they also had, remember, I don't know if remember National Lampoon, but they said, buy this magazine or we'll shoot the dog.
There you go.
Picture of a dog and gun right next to it, and said, they tried the hard sell. But
wasn't there was another book, Please Steal This Book. I remember that was one too.
Yes, Abby Hoffman, I think.
Yeah, that might be right. Yep.
Jerry Rubin, yes, telling people that go ahead and steal this book. But do you think that there's something that you would? Do you feel that people would want to read your life story if you had a chance to write it up?
So that's the thing. Lots of people have stories, and lots of people have books that are worthy and stories of being told and printed on page. And I'm a big advocate for that. There is also a fine line to, will they be purchased over this other thing that comes out at the same time, same as like you talked about Golden Globes or something. There are certain movies that never won awards because they came out the same year as Star Wars or the same year as Jaws or what have you. So that's another thing to wonder. Would my story do well? Maybe. I think I probably have to do a little bit more to make it so people would want to buy it over whatever else might come out the same month or two when mine were to be released. So I'm not working on mine right now. If you're wondering who I'm working, I'm doing Just Incredibles now. We've got Bruce Pritchard's kind of on hold a bit because he went back to active duty, and once he gets fired, we'll probably put it out again. Yeah,
it's too bad that you have to say once he gets fired, but you look at the track history. It's usually, unfortunately, that happens.
Yeah. So the neat thing though is somehow by doing all these books, I've often leaned on Mick Foley for help. He helped with Kamala's book. He helped with Sabu. He helped with Vader.
He really is one of the most intelligent wrestlers.
He's really cool. Yeah. So anyhow, whenever I ask him for a little quote, he gets me something together or, tries to help. So now what's happening is, and actually I have worked with him too, by the way. We put a coloring book out, Cactus Jack and the Beanstalk. So
I remember that, yes.
Him and I put together just kind of like what the nursery rhyme would be, or not, fairy tale would be like if Cactus Jack were the main lead in that story. And the giant he fights up in the beanstalk is actually Vader. And there's a bunch of cool little, Easter egg type things going on in there. So what happens now is, though, when somebody goes to him looking for help, he kind of defaults to me. So I'm getting these little offers like now. Recently, ODB contacted him. Hey, can you help me get a book together? So then he says, call Kenny. So then I'm talking to her now, and same thing happened. Who was the manager of Eminem? why am I drawing a blank on her name? She wants a book too. Latina. Oh, geez, it's horrible that I can't remember her name, and I'll remember it right after that. But she managed John Morrison and who was the other guy? Joey Mercury. I'll think of her name in a second. But she wrote me recently too. Same thing. So anyhow, to make a long story short, Mick Foley is throwing me ideas for books. So that's a nice little nod, you know. And I'm looking at one right now from a guy. I don't want to say it till it's said. I'll announce it soon. But same situation as my Danny Davis book.
Oh yeah, how's that going?
So when Danny Davis's book came out, he didn't. And this is the Danny Davis, the Ref, right? With the Hart Foundation.
Dangerous.
Yep, the big one from WrestleMania 3 with the Hart Foundation and all. He wanted to put a book out, but he didn't want to focus that much on wrestling. And that's really mostly what I have done with writing. So I'm thinking to myself, well, how do we make this work? Because he wants to focus on growing up as a kid, and he wants to show, the tough times he had, before going to WWF. And what I did was I said, okay, let's see how we can do this. And that's when I really started to get my creative chops together. And I kind of learned that when you interview somebody, you can spotlight on the little elements of their life and really bring out this scene to make it build. And what I did was I plugged it into the hit formula, which is probably the Hero Quest. Okay, so we'll go to Skywalker now here. I'm a little all over the place, but I'll bring it back in. George Lucas learned from a guy named Joseph Campbell. Joseph Campbell came up with a common pattern that all Hollywood types and also book writers and everybody seem to use, called the hero's journey or the hero quest, where basically you have a hero who is living a life that's okay. Something bad happens, and he's kind of thrust into journey, and he has to achieve this real high, this big thing. And there's a couple of, a handful of other obstacles along the way to meet that quest before it happens. And finally, when you get up to that final quest,
it's something that goes back to Japanese mythology.
Yeah. Well, that's what Joseph Campbell founded, right? So Joseph Campbell was a mythology comparison kind of historian, and he would look at a Hawaiian myth and that, all over the place, and found this common pattern, which a guy named Carl Jung calls an archetype. It's like a blueprint in our brain that we tap on in order to reach a common goal. So like if I wanted to tell a story, this Hero Quest kind of does a good job for it, and it draws people in. So you can plug anyone into that. Like if you think of Shrek, okay, Shrek is he's in the swamp. Something happens. I don't know if is he supposed to save the princess, or I think he's supposed to save a princess or defeat a dragon, right?
Yeah, they're going to destroy a swamp.
Yeah. So
castle, and then he gets wrapped up.
Sure, he has to do all of these obstacles, and he gets up to the highest point in the story. And there are also these other parts of that blueprint. So like there's supposed to be like a wise man, and there's supposed to be like a warrior that help the so like the donkey kind of fits this role of being
jester,
and also at the same time has some wise, points to him. Like he throws some information that actually helps Shrek, help from above, they say, and all of this. So like all of these patterns lead up to him fighting the dragon and getting the swamp back and all of this, the whole deal. All of them sort of fall. So I took that pattern and I plugged Danny Davis into this pattern. That was the first time that it clicked. Oh, I can do that. I know how to do this, because I teach English also. I'm an English teacher. And you just basically can do it by saying, okay, I'll expand it. Instead of spending a paragraph on this scene, I'll turn it into 3 or 4 pages. And then when you want to climb a little bit higher up that ladder, that's called Freytag's Pyramid, I'll expand on that 8 or 9 paragraphs, and then it gets bigger and bigger, and you get to that big, huge thing, and then quickly it ends, and then the world's a better place, and denouement, and we're finished, and we have either a happy ending, or usually what happens is the world is a better place after the quest has been achieved. Sometimes the hero dies. That's kind of Shakespearean. But sometimes life is so much better for them, like Back to the Future. Michael J. Fox has a better life, when he returns, kind of thing like that. So you can plug that into anything. And I did it with Danny Davis. That's probably my most favorite book I wrote, even though it doesn't sell as much, and now I've got another guy that's kind of looking, I may do the same thing because he actually has ties to Hollywood. His son is now a child actor. He's a Disney kid. He's doing it's probably going to give it away, but I'll just give a little bit more. He was Kevin James's son in the recent reboot of whatever that King of Queens show was called. Maybe it was called the Kevin James show.
Like something like James in the Middle or something like that.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah, there you go. So anyhow, that kid's father was kind of like a peripheral character in WWF for a period of time. I talked to him for about an hour the other day. We're not announcing it yet, but we're probably going to turn his story into something similar to that Danny Davis thing and go with like a Sopranos Breaking Bad kind of thing, because he also had mafia and mob ties and like all kinds of stuff. So
now, don't spoiler alert Breaking Bad for me. I'm a huge fan of Better Call Saul. I wasn't a fan of Breaking Bad, okay?
All right.
I just didn't care about it. Yep. But I am a gigantic fan. One of my favorite actors of all time is Bob Odenkirk.
Yeah, he's great.
I think he's great. So I started watching Better Call Saul because he's in there. And so my idea is to watch all of Better Call Saul all the way through till the end.
Why not? And then watch Breaking Bad. There you go.
Breaking Bad and watch it the way it's supposed to be.
That's cool. That's a good move.
A prequel. Yeah. But it's hard because I don't want any spoiler alerts for Breaking Bad, because I don't want to see I want to really see where Better Call Saul actually ends and how it then leads into Breaking Bad. It'll be an interesting experiment to see how that works. It's like watching the first episodes 1 through 3 of Star Wars, and then 4, 5, and 6.
Yeah. But I will give you a hint on the guy. Anyhow, he was on Primetime Wrestling, and he was like Bobby Heenan's sidekick for a short period of time. And
was that the guy's Jameson?
I will neither confirm nor deny.
Oh, okay. So
the guy that you're talking about there, Jameson, much darker fall from grace. Let me say it again. Much darker fall from grace type personality character than you would think outside of what you saw on TV. So it might make for a good read. I don't know. We'll see. So we're still talking. We haven't written anything, but we're talking.
I have one other quick question for you, because I know your time's limited, but I want to know if you could interview anyone, do a book on anyone, now, in the future, from the past, dead, alive, whatever, doesn't have to be wrestling, who would you want to do a book on?
Doesn't have to be wrestling?
No, just anybody.
I have to think, but if I go first wrestling and then we go with the idea he's passed, because I did want to do the book. I wanted to do King Kong Bundy's book because I had done a lot with him early on. That's so we kind of missed out on that. I talked to him a few times. He kept saying, Kenny, one day we'll do it. He's like, I'm not ready to do it yet. A lot of them give me that. I'm not ready to do it yet, because a lot of them still have, unfortunately, they still have the dream that there's another run in them, or there's another chapter that they want to wait for. And I would always encourage them, well, let's still hit it, while the iron's hot. And if you got some heat on you now, let's put the book out now, while you still have stuff going on, but
they're still alive.
Yeah. And that's basically a big part of it, right? Because now a handful of my guys are gone, unfortunately. But
it's sad.
It sucks. I mean, every morning you wake up and you're like, I hope not. There's nobody today.
It's true. I keep saying to Evan, can we please do a show one of these times without somebody in wrestling dying just before we do our show?
Yeah. It's a mess. So
50 weeks later, we still don't have that. But, it does make you appreciate guys who are still alive. But what about like a historical figure or something like that?
Tom Jones, I think, would be awesome. You know who I mean? Tom Jones, the singer. I think that'd be really cool. Current wrestlers, geez, I don't know. I thought, if I wanted to really shoot high, maybe a new Hulk Hogan book would be cool after all of his scandals and all of that. And I've tried to push a little bit to make that happen. Hasn't happened yet.
Just Beefcake. Between us, I'll tell you who would make a great book would be Christopher Daniels.
Not bad, yeah.
There's a guy who's been everywhere, done everything, been a big name and a small name, worked tiny little venues and big venues in Japan and Europe and titles and every different type of thing you can think of. And he's a super nice guy and a friend of mine, so you can always drop that.
He came on my COVID Con thing that I did there. He was on for a quick talk. He was with I think he was with Michael Kingston. Yeah, so Michael Kingston, the comic book guy. I'm pretty sure that he was the one that brought him in for that. So we might have to ask him, see if he's interested. You could ask him if you're talking. You talk to him some? Or?
I haven't talked to Chris in about 15 years, but
okay.
Any excuse would be great to do so. Yeah, and mention just a minute or two about COVID Con. Are there going to be any future COVID Cons now that we're kind of getting out of the...
I don't know. Here's why I would say no. I think that we were kind of the first ones to do all that virtual, talking and all of this. There wasn't anything. When I put that flyer together, there was nothing. So everybody jumped on. I mean, we had people from all over. Wrestlers wanted to do it. The authors wanted to do it. Artists for, wrestling type projects wanted to do it. And we had for 3 days straight, we had just nonstop people talking virtually. And there are some little glitches here and there, but who cares? The fans enjoyed it. If you turn on Facebook now at any time, there's always some kind of autograph signing and with little bits of Q&A. Not quite like what we did, but I think we kind of had it with what do they say, like lightning in a bottle. We had the moment, we did it, we grabbed it, we made it happen. If we were to do it now, I think I'd be competing with this virtual signing over here, this auction over here, and I'm not sure we would have the eyes on it, or people might not care now, because now it's a regular built-in thing, where these live podcasts are happening on, say, like Facebook and Periscope and whatever else they're using, Twitter and Instagram and all that. So my guess is no, but never say never. We tried it with Cauliflower Alley Club, and we were able to make something happen that year when nothing was going to happen. We didn't have a lot of viewers, and I don't know if it's because it was my third attempt at it, and like I said, other people are doing all kinds of little stuff, and plus we made it like a pay-per-view fundraiser, and it seemed like people didn't want to really pay a lot for it, so we didn't have a ton of hits, but it was still a good show and a way to get a little exposure out there to Cauliflower when they couldn't meet last year. So we'll see what happens,
Wow. Well, we're getting up at the end of the hour. I really super appreciate the time that you were able to devote, especially last second. But please give our fans a chance to promote yourself and tell people how they can get a hold of you and check out all the different books that you have for sale.
Sure. Mostly I'm Kenny Casanova on pretty much all social, what do you call it stuff? Social media platforms.
Yes. Thank you.
Most of our books are at wohw.com. My publishing company is called Walking on Hot Waffles. Doesn't really mean anything, but you'll remember it, or maybe not. You can get stuff right on Amazon here and there. Coming soon, I'm publishing or producing, I guess, a Ken Patera book with a guy named Simon Gregory. We got a Chavo Guerrero Sr. book that official autobiography was put together just before he passed. He passed, and it's just been kind of in limbo, but we got the son in, so that's coming in soon, as well as maybe Mr. Hughes is kind of in the works. I'm doing Just Incredible. So those are down the pike. We'll see him soon. And check me out. Social media, I said that. So, KennyCasanova.com. You can find all my stuff there.
That is really great. And you've been a wonderful guest. Thank you again for being on the show this week. And we'll definitely have you on the show again, maybe part of a roundtable, or when we do like an anniversary show or something like that. We'd love to have you back on too. So thank you so much for being here this week. And we'll say goodbye to everyone, and we'll see you all next week. Thank you so much, Kenny.
And that girl's name was Melina, by the way.
Yeah, I was just about to say that, and then I got caught up and everything. So we'll really appreciate it, and looking forward to your next book and everything else that you got going on. Talk to you again soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.
See ya.